Yes, thank you for the introduction. I am Ryan Field. I am now a final year PhD student, so I'm about to submit in 3-ish months. There's a nice QR code if you want to learn more about me. But I will be talking about expectations of a PhD student and a healthy work-life balance. So a lot of this draws from the postgraduate research student handbook. If you haven't read this document, I would advise you actually read it. I think it's now 66 pages long-ish. It's quite a long document, but most of the things you need for your PhD should be covered in this document. If not, I do have a list of resources that may also help. There's a QR code and a link if you want to follow that. Okay, so what does it mean to be a PhD candidate? Now, this is a good question. And in the UK, you can call yourself a PhD candidate. There's no formal exam to become a PhD candidate. I know in some other countries there are. But you will be a postgraduate researcher. Now, this is a gray area between staff and student. Also, depending on how you're funded or how you're doing your PhD, you might be both. You might just be a student, a postgraduate student. You may be staff, but it can be a gray area. You'll produce a thesis, original work, making significant contribution and knowledge and understanding to your field. So this is quite a long document, like 50,000 words or so, depending on how long you write it. I don't think there's a minimum requirement, but there's definitely a maximum. The PGR handbook does have guidance on thesis. There are multiple ways to write your thesis. You don't have to do it in a standard format. There's alternative format, but please refer to the PGR handbook. You will defend your thesis during a viva. Now, the rules on this keep changing, but typically you'll have an external examiner and an internal examiner, as well as a convener. They'll basically ask you questions about your thesis after reading it, and you'll just have to answer the questions. And then you'll also undergo training and engagement activities to further your knowledge in your career. As Joanna said, I have done a lot of this. You may have seen me before if you've been to a few of these. You're expected, or the PGR handbook states that you're expected to gain 20 credits. Please don't think of this as a goal. This is just an aim. Don't just take courses to gain credits. Try and take courses that are either fun or actually help with your PhD. So that is generalizing what a PhD candidate is. How long will a PhD take? This is also depending on your circumstances. It's either 3 to 4 years full-time, can be more, 5 to 6 years part-time. So time-wise, to get your PhD can change, circumstances can change. You can take suspension of studies. You might need an extension. These are all things you just have to consider. But the minimum is 3 years. You can't do it below that. Trust me, I've tried. So how long should you be spending a week on your PhD? So when I started, I asked my supervisor, how long should I be working per week on my PhD? And they told me to treat it like a full-time job, 35 to 40 hours a week. Now, depending on your situation and your type of PhD, you might be in a lab, you might be working behind a desk, it might be hybrid. So you can typically work your hours around what works best for you. Sometimes you might want to work from home. Sometimes you might want to work from an office if you have one. Hopefully your office has walls. I've met PhD students, sorry, not walls, well, walls as well, but windows. I've met PhD students that don't have windows. And also, do you get to take holidays? This is something I'm very vocal about, is reminding PhD students to take time off. not just weekends, but the handbook states you get 8 weeks, including public holidays and days the university are closed. Now, this can vary depending on who's funding your PhD. This is just sort of a university standard policy. Don't forget to take holiday, please. Please take what you're entitled for. And when you do take holiday, set an out of office. Don't respond to emails. You don't even have to look at them. There might be circumstances where if you're in the middle of a project and or you're doing an experiment and you've taken a holiday, you might have to, but try and avoid this because you need to take time off. You need to get away, sometimes refocusing the mind. So some tips to unwind. So as I said, turn automatic replies on when on holiday. I have known students whose supervisors have contacted them while they're on leave, approved leave, and they've responded. You're not expected to respond. You're also not expected to respond outside of normal working hours. So if, say, someone emails you at 12 p.m., 12 a.m., sorry, not 12 p.m., 1 a.m. in the early hours of the morning, unless it's considered an emergency, don't respond to it. It can wait till tomorrow. It really can. You might, obviously, this might be an extenuating circumstances, say a fridge goes down in a lab and they need to know which samples to save. Feel free to respond to that, but you're not expected to respond to emails outside of normal working hours. This is typically 9 to 5. There are some organized events that can help. There are weekly PGR walks. These are 1 p.m. These are on the main campus. They meet outside of the Gilchrist Postgraduate Club. I've only ever attended one of these, to be honest. And sometimes you do need to take an umbrella. But they also have a PGR gardening club. This is on Viewfield Lanes. This will also be on Wednesday at 5 p.m. There are always emails about this. You'll get one weekly. I think there was one this morning. I would advise if you're into gardening, go along. Even if you're not, it's a good way to meet people. Bringing on to my next point, talk to other PhD students. So sometimes you can be the only PhD student in your department or your field or whatever it is. There are social events. I know Joanna and the PGR team do try to bring PGR and PhD students together. So do try to go along to this, to talk about your PhD. If you're talking to PhD students, probably not best to ask how their PhD is going or how long they've got left. This will get not annoying, but it might become a sore subject over time if continuously asked how long you've got left. So maybe ask about their research first, not how long they've got left. So you can attend team and PhD social functions. There is a PhD society which organizes extra functions. You may be integrated into part of a team. You may have team meetings. Don't feel like you can't attend these, even if you feel out of place. I know it can be a bit daunting, but also consider a change of scenery. So as I alluded, usually a PhD student, depending on your area, you'll get a desk somewhere in some building. It might be underground if you're in the engineering school without windows. So there are other ways of working. So you can work from home. We often, if it's a sunny day, we'll go to a pub. The Brow pub off Ashton Lane has a great beer garden, and you can connect at your own Wi-Fi from the geography building. So it's great if you need to just get out of the office. You don't even have to, I'm not suggesting you have alcoholic drinks. They do soft drinks as well. There's also the new learning hub. I can't, James McEwen or something. It's a fancy name. It's a nice shiny building. You can work from there. Or level 2 of the ARC, the Advanced Research Center, is now open for all PhD students. Your card should get you into level 2, and they have a dedicated PhD space, workstations, and all sorts of things that you can go and work if you just don't want to work in the office. I would advise trying to work elsewhere, always nice, change of scenery. Obviously, Glasgow weather permitting, might not be good to work outside if it's raining. So another topic I want to just briefly touch on is imposter syndrome. So everyone gets it. If you ask them and they say they don't get it, chances are they're lying. Many PhD candidates experience it. No, you're not alone. If you are taking a PhD, you deserve to be doing so. You've obviously applied for the PhD, whether it's funded or not. You've had to go through that formal process of getting onto a PhD program. Each year, you're given an annual review. Usually, you'll continue. Just know that these are sort of metrics to know that you're on the right track. They're there to tell you that you've got nothing really to worry about. Don't compare yourself to others. Each PhD is different. If you go to Enlighten, they have all of the Glasgow PhDs available that have been submitted, or the British Library have all of the UK PhDs. I think you have to sign up, but it's free. So if you ever scroll through PhDs, you'll notice that there is no sort of formal format. So each PhD is different. You can have PhD by alternative formats, so you can include publications into your thesis, that kind of thing. So you just don't compare yourself to others. Each PhD experience is different. Someone might be still working on a systematic review while you're collecting data, or the other way around. It's not comparable. Just know you're on the right track. Your supervisors and the annual review process are there as a safety net to make sure that you're not going to fall behind. As I said, your supervisors won't let you submit subpar work. So knowing anything you submit will be of the highest quality. It will also be defended in the viva, and your supervisor is not going to suggest you undertake a viva unless you're likely to pass. So if something does go wrong, it's always good to know what to do. So your first point of call, talk to your supervisor sooner rather than later. I've had conversations with my supervisors when things have gone wrong with sort of data analysis or personal issues. Just keep them up to date. I do also have a list of other people you can talk to if your concern is about your supervisor. Document the issue. So this doesn't have to be formal documentation, but even in a notebook, if you just write down a date or if something happened, it's always good to know, just so you remember, because it can help in your annual review or if you need to get an extension. And if, as I say, the issue is severe enough, you can bring it up in either your initial or annual review, depending on what stage of your PhD you're at. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I've asked for help before. I've asked stupid questions. I thought I had an epiphany the other day, and it turns out I was completely wrong. And I'm supposed to be writing up my thesis. So do not be afraid to ask for help. Help is available. So where to get help? So the first three are taken directly from the PGR handbook, and they're what you're meant to do officially according to the PGR handbook. So your supervisor, PGR conveners, or Dean of Graduate Studies should typically be in this order. However, you might have a problem with your supervisor. They might be emailing you while you're on holiday. They may have expectations that you just can't fulfill. So there are other places you can go. You can bring issues up with your annual reviewers. These are sort of anonymous. They do report back to the PGR convener. Do be aware that you might want to do it anonymously completely. So we do have PGR representatives. So I am a PGR rep for our school. If you do not know who your PGR rep is, you can send me an email or Joanna or the SRC, we can find out who your PGR rep is. They can take your concerns on board anonymously, so you don't have to go through a formal process of telling your supervisor, especially if it's an issue with your supervisor. The SRC has resources available. You may not know this, but many departments have what are called mental first aiders. So these are first aiders for mental health. These are people, if you're sort of having mental health issues, who can direct, they've undergone training so that they can direct you to appropriate resources, or just listen to you informally. The counseling and psychological services offer free counseling for students. I think you get 6 sessions. You can look at this up if you feel like you need it. The university have a crisis team in case it's severe. And also don't forget admin staff. Often your team will have very helpful admin staff. If not, your school, what used to be institute, should also have a PGR admin you can contact, who can direct you to help you need. They can tell you, email this person or who to email. It's as simple as that. So just get help if you feel like you need it, and get help early. And another thing I like to iterate is, don't forget you have a choice. So some teams or departments may ask you to mark master's projects or help the team in other ways. Sometimes this can be a burden. There is sometimes a level of expectation that you would do some marking for like free. You do have a choice to say no. If they don't take no for an answer, you can always raise this up higher through one of the resources I mentioned. You may also be asked by colleagues or team members to help out or collaborate. While this can be useful, like I've had publications with other team members, don't feel like you have to. If it's beneficial for you, I would say do it. But if you feel like you can't do it or you don't have the time, simply say no. You can say it politely. You don't have to be like, nah, I'm busy. You can just professionally let them down politely. You may also be invited to attend many seminars, talks, and events. I get so many emails with events, and you can't attend all of them. It's nice to try and attend them where possible, but just remember you're doing a PhD, you've still got to write a thesis, you've still got data collection. There's so much to do. It's not possible to attend every single seminar you get an invite to. As I've said, it may be beneficial to do all of these, but remember, unless they're mandatory, so there are some training that you have to undertake mandatory. So they're all listed in the PGI handbooks, like the ethics and that kind of thing, research data management. You have a choice. Don't take on too much responsibility just because you're asked to do so. And then finally, don't forget to breathe. This might be obvious, but undertaking a PhD, it can be daunting. It's a very big task. You've got to write a lot of words. These can be big words in some cases. So remember, you're not alone. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to take some of the less academic courses. So as I said, the credit system is not just a tick list that you have to gain 20 credits. There are some, I took the first aid course when it was back in person. I think we'll probably start that too, just because I could. I thought it was fun. I didn't need to take first aid, but I did it. There are other courses. There's Mind Your Mate, there's mental health awareness courses, there's racism awareness courses, dignity in the workplace, that kind of thing. If you have the time, feel free to take them. Take a breath occasionally. Don't forget to breathe. Also, don't forget to take breaks if you're spending long periods of time on the computer. As I say, you should really sort of try and treat it like a job. That means you should be entitled to lunch. I will typically take an hour out of my day, sometimes less, sometimes more, to have lunch. Don't forget to do this. I often see other PhD students working at their desk eating lunch. You don't have to do this. I understand you may have deadlines, but it's important to eat and drink, stay hydrated. So don't forget to do this. Take time out of your day, even if it's just to reflect. Exercise can be helpful, even if it's just walking to and from work. And then stay hydrated. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you found that useful. I will just put up my contact details in case anyone wants to scan the QR code. Thank you very much for listening.